Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, my name's Rich McDonald, and I played David Mason in Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and you're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hey everybody, you're listening to Everything Geek podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Leif Gaffert. I played Uncle Ben's killer in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
You're listening to the Everything Geek podcast, bringing you interviews from your favorite films and TV shows every week, and all of the latest news. Here's your host, Ruari Williamson.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Rory, and joining me today is a very special guest. We have Demetrius Bridges, best known for playing Dorian Williams in the Vampire Diaries, Xander in Containment, Trey Johnson in Man and Wife, Jarrett in the DUFF, Al in Computer Love, Edwin in Justice, Jock in Barely Lethal, and Keith in the Rickey Smiley Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm alright, how you doing?
Very good, thanks. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Oh man, I'm excited to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So getting right into my questions for you, Demetrius, can you tell us how you got into acting?
Yeah, I always had like an interest in it. When I was in high school, I joined like this theater class. I was about to graduate, and I had enough credit. So, you know, at that point, they kind of just stick you into any class that you like to be in, whether that's a bunch of PE classes or theater or art or whatever. So I just had them make up my schedule when it happened to be a theater class. I took this class. I really enjoyed it. And from there, that just sparked my interest in it. So I would say from that point is what kind of got me rolling into it. I already had an interest in it, but I guess it lied dormant for a while, and getting back into that class is what kind of re-sparked things.
Yeah, absolutely, and it always helps if it's a really great class as well, because, you know, then you just get more and more enthusiastic in it, you know, once you start to become more passionate about it, taking those classes.
Exactly, yeah. Like I said, I had an interest in it, but I had kind of like, you know, forgot about it. I was in school and, you know, everything else that was going on in school. But, when I got back in that class, it just, it turned things, you know, it was fun again, and it was like all these cool things. So, yeah, totally.
Great. So can you tell us how you were originally cast as Dorian in the Vampire Diaries?
Right. So, I worked on Containment, which is a CW show, and it was from the creator of the Vampire Diaries, Julie Plec. So I had worked on Containment with her. We did our season. It was really, really cool. And once we wrapped our season, basically she just brought me over to the Vampire Diaries, man. We had like a really good relationship, and I was a fan of this show. And she was working on the next season, and I just kind of got brought into the whirlwind that is the Vampire Diaries. So that's pretty much how I got involved.
That's really cool. And you mentioned just there that you were a fan of the Vampire Diaries before you were cast in the show. Who would you say was your favorite character before you were cast?
Oh, wow. Good question. I don't know, man. I got like 4 favorite characters because it's like they were my favorite characters at different times. So I guess Stefan would be like maybe the first, because I was like, oh, this cool guy, you know what I mean? Look at him. He gets to go to high school whenever he wants, and he gets to do whatever he wants. And then, of course, his brother became my favorite after that because he was like the badass. And I don't know, can I say that on your podcast?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, cool. But so he was the badass. And then it was Bonnie, you know. I don't know, I just like Bonnie. She was just cool to me. And then it was Caroline, Candace, who's like I just like the role she portrayed, man. I just like who she was. So it was like everyone in the cast at a certain point. So I didn't have like one that was really just the overall, but it was Nina. You know what I mean? I was just a fan of the show.
Yeah, it's really great. And when you were cast in the show, what were you told about Dorian originally?
So he was like he worked with a lark, and I was the intern. You know, I was the intern for a lark, and I had a partner. And initially, I was just told that bit of information, and we would just go along as we went along. But initially, it was just, you know, he's an intern. But you know, there was a sense that there was more, but it wasn't revealed to me. You know what I mean? They didn't give me that off top, which I wouldn't even have wanted that. So yeah, initially it was just, you know, he's an intern working for a lark right now. So it was a pretty cool situation.
Definitely. And of course, Dorian had a really interesting character arc over the last season of the show. What was it like developing his character over the last season of the Vampire Diaries?
Right, it was fun. I mean, first it's bittersweet because you know it's the last season, and but it was so fun because, like I said, I was a fan. So my role was really good. It was like I was the intern, and I was the guy that knew all the ins and outs and backstories to the folklore or the myths and everything like that, so I could educate people on it. That was my study in school as part of my storyline. So developing was fun because it's like I get to go and research all these different things in history, you know what I mean, that are or possibly mythical, you know what I mean? Like, there's, you know, we all have these stories everywhere throughout human history, and it's like, wow, did that really happen or did it not? And with Dorian, it gives me a chance to be that, to explore that, and that's really fun, you know what I mean? That'd be fun on a normal day, right? Like, if you just spent your day and you just researched all these things, you would really get caught up in it. So I would say that was the fun part, is that his role was that guy to seek out that kind of information. That was pretty fun about it.
Yeah, definitely. In the final episode of the show, I Was Feeling Epic, we last see Dorian working at the Salvatore boarding school for the young and gifted with Jeremy. If you had your way, what would you like to see in Dorian's story after the events of the show?
If I had it my way, I would just like him to be like a vital part of that school. I thought the school was a really, really good idea. It just made so much sense, right? Like, you know, they open up the school, and so gifted students can come and have a place to be and feel safe, and explore their gifts and things like that. So I would just want Dorian to be the guy that, kind of like who he was in the show, is to help them understand their powers and to give them the background, because they may not know, and he's an expert in that field. So to give them the background, to give them the guidance and kind of guide their way and help them out, and just kind of be that big brother figure when they're dealing with things to help them. I think that would be like a really cool part in it, and that's what I would want for Dorian, you know, with the school, moving forward with the school. It's just to guide these students, or maybe these troubled kids who don't understand themselves quite yet, and make them into everything that everyone in the Vampire Diaries cast became. You know, they went from, you know, learning about these mystical things and these crazy histories that they have with their families to these heroes, basically. So that's what I would want for Dorian and with the school.
Yeah, definitely. Although, of course, I do have to say as well, with the whole Salvatore boarding school for the young and gifted, it's not at all heavy on the X-Men reference.
Right. Right, yeah. So, I mean, hey, you know, that's just, hey. I mean, what else, though? What else do you do? I mean, that's just where it would, I mean, to me, it made sense, because it's just like, hey, you know, the whole series, you encounter all of these mythical beings, man, and it's like, to explore the side of like when they're young, when they're first You know what I mean? Like if the cast of the Vampire Diaries had discovered this school from the jump, you know what I mean? What that have looked like. But yeah, man, School of the Gifted.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying Vampire Diaries, ripped off X-Men or anything. Just, unless someone tells me otherwise, like one of the writers of the show or something, I'm just going to keep thinking to myself, that's an X-Men reference, or at least if I want it to be that way, I'll just think of it that way.
Right? Yeah. If it works for you, man, do what you do. Use it.
Yeah. How would you describe, like, what was the experience like working with the cast and crew of the Vampire Diaries?
It was really cool. I mean, there's some cool guys. There's some cool, obviously, people love the show. I was excited, like I said, being a fan and coming in and being familiar, you wonder what it's going to be like. And I mean, I was just, I came in and it was like clockwork, man. And they were all really, really dope, like, introducing themselves and, whatever, like before the scene, whatever we needed to do. It was really cool. It was really, really cool. With everybody. I didn't get to meet Nina. She wasn't on the show at that point. Or Michael. Well, it was a couple of them I didn't get to meet, but I imagine they would have been the same. But it was really dope, like working. And then it was the crew as well. Like a lot of the crew on Containment also worked on the Vampire Diaries. So it was kind of like a family affair for me. When I came in, I saw a lot of familiar faces and people I had worked with before. So, I just came in and was ushered in quite well, man. And it was so dope. Like the crew, the cast and crew behind the show, just so awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I think that matters a lot when you have not only people in front of, but behind the scenes who mesh well. And they were tight knit, man. They were a fun group of people. And I would enjoy that. I would enjoy going to work there. It was amazing.
Absolutely. And of course you mentioned that some of the crew, were from Containment as well as Julie Plec, of course. Would you say you spent, more time around them at first when you were cast because you already knew them, or did you mix in well with the rest of the cast and crew right away?
It was both. It was both. Because also Kristen from Containment, if you watch Containment, she played Katie. She was brought over to the Vampire Diaries as well. So we were Containment family, but now we were both brought over to the Vampire Diaries. So it was just like, it was the same, man. It was just like, we just jumped right in with the cast and the crew. It was kind of like Containment, you know what I mean? So I would say it was both. It was totally both, because you mesh, when the camera's not rolling, you're around, you're at the craft services table and you're talking and whatnot. So it was that, it was both. It was both.
Yeah, it's really great. What would you say were the biggest challenges you faced while working on the show?
The biggest challenges. Well, I would say for me, you see, Dorian had dialogue that was it could get wordy at times. I mean, it could get, because I'm talking about, a lot of information, right? Like, so I was bringing a lot of information to the show. He was kind of like the guy who, would scour through books and get information and things like that to help out. And so that would be the thing is like, when you're talking about dialogue or words that's about mythical things from thousands of years ago. Some of that stuff can even be a tongue twister to even say, you know what I mean? So that would probably be a challenge. That was probably the most challenging part is like sometimes it would get worried, but that's the nature of his role and the guy that he is, with anybody, anything. If you worked in quantum physics, that's wordy. You know what I mean? You have to, if you worked in mathematics, that stuff can get wordy with how you explain it to people. You have to bring it back to layman's terms when you talk to people. So that would be probably was the most challenging part.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. What would you say are your favorite memories from your time working on the Vampire Diaries?
Oh man, favorite memories. It was tons of them. I would say my episode with Stefan, that's a great memory of mine, man. Where we got to just hash it out. and we were shooting. It was like, I think it might have been raining, and we were out in like a wooded area. It was just everybody. We were just out there, and we just had to get this done. And everybody was like in. Everybody was, with whatever we had to do. Like that's the scene where I shoot him. He fell back into the dirt. It was moist, and it was like cold, and like, he had to do that multiple times. So it's like, who wants to do that? You know what I mean? But he was so game, and like, so that would be like one of them, is just shooting that entire episode. That was pretty fun. And just the cast, man. The cast was really, really cool. Yeah. Every episode, I'm just thinking like it was each episode that I was on presented a memory, man. Just being there and being like, what's crazy is when I sometimes I would walk on set and I would recognize things, and be like, wow, I remember that from this previous episode or whatever. And like I said, being a fan of something beforehand, that totally geeks you out. You just see it and you're like, wow, that's what that is. Okay, and I see how they built that, and that's extra cool. So that, and then the last episode was that's a memory, because they're family, and I was kind of like a new member, and to be around and witness that was really special. To see everyone on that last episode, and the camaraderie and everything that was going on. So there was a couple of memories, man. So those would be some of them.
Yeah, it's really cool. And as well as the thing you were mentioning, the episode with Stefan, and like how you would also recognize so many things from previous seasons. Like that's one of the things I really liked that episode as well. Not just that we got more exposure to Dorian's character, but that part of his backstory was actually a reference to a previous season. When Stefan was in Ripper mode while with Klaus, and some of the people he killed, it's revealed, were some of Dorian's family. Like, I thought that was a really interesting reference and made for some really interesting scenes in that episode. I mean, as a fan yourself, how did you react when you read the script? I mean, were you immediately like, oh, that's a really good reference to a previous season?
Yeah, I thought it was cool. I thought that the moment was really cool, because, Stefan did some wild stuff, man. He did some wild stuff. And, they were the guys in town. So he didn't really get reproved for any of it. Nobody could really, like, kick their ass. Or when they got into it with people, I mean, they would always come back. So, and then I thought about the victims, right? When he was in Ripper mode, he did a lot of shit, man, like a lot, you know what I mean? And what you don't consider a lot of times is the human victims, Sometimes they would fight back against other supernaturals, you know what I mean? But for the human victims, that's what I liked about the entire episode is, when people started getting their memories back, it became a big problem, because it's like, well, damn, we didn't even consider that, right? Just the human victims who have to continue going about life. And then when they remember this, it's like, oh, wow, this happened. So I thought when I read it, I thought it was really cool as a reference to all of that. And I like that moment between me and him where the audience gets to see Stefan's perspective on it as a human, right? Because he fesses up and he feels terrible. I mean, from that episode, a couple before that and a couple after that, you can see him going through it as a human, feeling everything that he had done. So I thought it was cool to get that perspective and for the audience to see, because, we saw him in Ripper mode. We saw when he was like, he didn't give a shit, you know what I mean? Like, and we saw when he was obligated to do it at times and all that sort of kind of thing. But I liked when I read it is that, you got to see his perspective on it from the side of he's not crazy, he's not in his mode, he's not, you know what I mean? So I when I read it, I was really, I guess you could say, taken aback by that. I liked it,
Yeah, definitely. Which would you say has been the most challenging role in your career so far?
Most challenging in my career so far, let's see. I think that, every role represents its specific set of challenges. And with every role, it's like you're only as good as your last effort. Like, you're only as good as your last role. So, basically that means that you're getting, if you're bringing the most that you can to a role, it's the last role is going to represent the most challenging one, right? Because you're on a new plateau and you're fighting against new things, and you know what I mean? But most challenging, which would I say? I don't know, man. I think that all of them represent a certain challenge at certain parts of it in my work and in my career. Vampire Diaries, that was, like I said, the wordy aspects of it would be like when I would see stuff like that, I'm like, oh man. But every role would be, has its own challenge. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it made it all worth it though when you did, finish a scene in the Vampire Diaries though, especially a wordy one, because you could just be like, well, I got through that. I mean, it was challenging, but I still did it and learned something from it at the same time.
Of course, like that's definitely it's awesome, right? Because beforehand you're like, oh man, I have to make sure we hit this, and after you get it and you move on, you're so like, ooh, well, I only got 2 lines in the next scene, so cool. But you totally feel better. It's like, I don't know, climbing a rock wall or something. You look at it and you're like, sheesh, but they're telling you got to do it. Go ahead and do it. And once you reach the top and you hit that button on the top or whatever, and you come back down, you feel relieved. You're like, yeah. Now you look back at that mountain and you say, well, I climbed that. So, so it's totally cool.
That's really great. My final question for you, Demetrius, do you have any upcoming acting roles or any other projects that you would like to talk about?
Actually, I'm going to be in the originals, the premiere episode. So that's something you guys got to watch out for. I was just on the quad on BET, and that episode is probably still airing right now. But yeah, be on the lookout for the originals, man. I think it's a pretty cool tie-in to kind of like whenever you can get like that crossover from one show to the other, and those 2 shows are tied in anyway. But so the originals is going into their last season, so definitely tune in at the premiere of that for a peek of your boy. Check out Dorian.
Yeah, it's really great. It's great to hear that Dorian will be back. It's always good to see more of him.
Oh man, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, he's a fun guy, man. Fun show. Just an amazing thing. An amazing thing to be a fan of something, and then you're there working with that entire group and being a part of that. So it's a really dope thing. I mean, as I think about it, as you make me reminisce, I may watch some of it today. You know what I mean? It's one of those shows that it has a really great fan base, and you watch it and you see why. You know what I mean? Like you can go back to specific episodes and just kind of just like fall into them like you did when you first watched them. Really cool show, man. Really cool show.
Absolutely, and now you can also say that you're one of the few cast members in the whole universe of both shows that have appeared on both of the shows as your character. So that's pretty cool as well.
That is pretty cool as well. I like that. I like telling someone, hey, go check this show, go see the Vampire. And now before it was, hey, you got to watch this show, the Vampire Diaries. It was pretty cool. And then it became, well, go watch it because I'm on that. So that's pretty fun. And it's now, with the crossover part of it, it's extra excellent, man. It's just like, that's, you're right. I didn't even consider that. It's now you're in both worlds, you know what I mean? Which is super dope.
Absolutely. Well, that's all of my questions for you today, Demetrius. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me, man. Best in all of your efforts and your work. You have a cool podcast, man. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome, and I wish you all of the best as well. Hopefully we can talk again sometime.
I look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. We'll talk to you again soon then. Take care and bye.
Take care.
time to wrap up today's show. Make sure to check out our podcast links. Check out our website, www.everythinggeekpodcast.com/EGP. Check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official-everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the following email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comiccast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the host's YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Sepidus Check out Demetrius Bridges on Twitter, twitter.com/actor DemetriusB, and check out channel 1138 where we broadcast live from, www.channel1138.com. Geeks out, everyone.
There's a moment, and it's not the only one, there's lots of kind of highlights, but there's a moment when you walk onto a set on the first day, and it's something
Wesley, where I had like my fingers up to his temples, and it was so cold that night. I think I had 4 pairs of pants on and like multiple layers of jackets, and it was so cold that water bottles had frozen.